Hi there, my name is Caitlin Bandy, and this is my channel Bandy's Books, and I am here with a live update. It has been quite a while since I've been around to do a live, and that's because February was just an extraordinarily busy month for me. I mentioned this a couple weeks back when I did my last live stream in February, but I worked for the Super Bowl. So that week that I worked the Super Bowl, I did like 83 hours of work in 1 week. And then the week following, I was really exhausted. And then we had friends visiting and stuff this last week. So it's just been a little bit chaotic through the last couple weeks. And now I should be back to more of a normal update mode. I will be back to posting much more regularly and getting back to the live streams regularly and some reading sprints and things like that. So hopefully you will be seeing me popping up a bit more on your feed than I was in February. While February was a little bit slower in terms of posting and definitely slower in terms of going live, it was pretty fantastic in terms of like the couple of videos I posted did do really well. And I passed the 1.5K mark on my channel, which is pretty exciting for me. I never ever dreamed that I would have 1,500 plus friends to talk books about. So I kind of like feel like I'm pinching myself every morning when I log into my YouTube and I'm checking things out. So if you've recently joined the channel, thank you so much for that. Like I said, this is like a pretty spectacular thing for me. So that brings me to channel updates. So like I mentioned, we're going to be working on getting back to a normal posting schedule this month. Now that the chaos of all the extra crazy work weeks are over, March is looking like a much smoother month for me in terms of work. I'm not picking up a ton of extra work, and I actually anticipate having a lot more free time in March in general. So I will be posting a lot more regularly. I'm going to be trying to do more live streaming and things like that. So you'll definitely see me around. I also want to schedule a live stream for passing 1.5 thousand subscribers. I just want to do like a Q&A discussion kind of thing, but I want to do it live. Last time I did a pre-recorded video and that was fun, but I think that it's kind of fun to get to interact with people and chat. So I think I'm going to plan that not for this week, but the following week. So I have time to collect questions from people. So if you're in here and you have any questions that you want me to answer during my 1.5K live stream, just throw them in the comment box. Feel free to say hi if you're, coming in right now. Totally pop in your questions, comments, concerns, whatever. So I also will be focusing this month on catching up my last 3 books for this first round of the BookTube Prize. I did manage to read 3 out of the 6 books in February, and I have 3 left to read in March before the voting deadline, which I think is very doable. I'm really enjoying this round. I'm like kind of bummed that I'm not allowed to talk about the books right now because honestly, the 6 books that I got were fantastic, and I'm not really sure right now how I'm going to rank them. Obviously, I still have 3 left to read, but the first 3 that I read were really, really strong and all about very interesting topics. So I think this is going to continue to be very interesting. So for posting next week or this coming week, my plans are to get up my TBR for January, which is like all about readathons. There's tons of readathons going on in March, and I want to participate in all of them, it seems. I do this to myself every single March. I try to dive into every single one. So my TBR is a little bit all over the place. But that's okay. It should be a fun reading month. So that'll be up, I hope, tomorrow. Tuesday, I'm hoping to do the Girl Scout cookie tag. I was tagged in that by Melinda. I have some Girl Scout cookies to use as props, so I figured I should get that one done before I eat all the cookies. And then I have my February wrap-up video. It should be out on Wednesday. February was a fantastic reading month. Even though I didn't post a lot of videos while I was reading, I still managed to read quite a few really good books. So I'm looking forward to getting that one up and letting you guys know what I read for the whole month. And then I'm hoping to do my book of the month prediction video on Thursday. That's my favorite video of the month. It's also the one that gets the most feedback and, really seems to do well. So I look forward to getting that one done. And then on Friday, I'm hoping to post a book review. I'm not sure what I'm going to review yet, but I do think I'm going to probably be reviewing Piglet by Lottie Hazel. We'll see. I may switch that up, but that's tentatively the plan for now. So let's get into reading. So for the last week, I read quite a few books. It was a very successful reading week, so I'm pretty happy about that. I ended up starting the week with No Heaven for Good Boys by Keisha Bush. This is a modern day Oliver Twist, and it's set in Senegal. It follows two boys. One is like an older cousin and a younger cousin, and they are talibe, which is like students to a teacher. And so they're taken from their village and they're sent to the capital city. And then the teacher is supposed to like give them lessons in spirituality and life and like kind of help them grow up. And as talibe, it's like their job to go out and recruit other students, earn money, things like that. They're supposed to like how to learn how to work and live and all that. But in this case, the gentleman that is running this school for these boys is very abusive and really taking advantage of the boys. He's sending them out to work and then taking all of their money and then really not providing them much. So this is a pretty bleak and depressing story. Like I said, it's based off of Oliver Twist, or inspired by Oliver Twist. So you know it's not going to be like super pleasant or uplifting. I thought it was really well written. I really appreciated that it was set in Senegal. I have not yet read a book. Actually, I lied. I've read one other book set in Senegal before, so it was kind of nice to see a book taking place in a country that I don't see popping up in literature too much, at least here in the States. I enjoyed this. If you like, more depressing, dark types of reads, then this is probably a good one for you. And then I also read The Attic Child by Lola J. I've been meaning to read this one for quite a while. I finally got to it this month, and this was also a really good book, but also a pretty sad book. Not quite as bleak as No Heaven for Good Boys, but this one's got some really bleak, dark stuff in it too. But it is really well written. There are some magical realism elements in this, and what am I trying to say? Not magical realism. It's like there's some suspension of disbelief required, because there's some parts that are a little bit maybe unrealistic. But overall, I think it was pretty well written. It's definitely well researched. I really appreciated the author's note at the end of the book explaining like where she got her idea from, what inspired her to write this book. So it was really a good read, really very poignant. I had gotten this copy from my mom. My mom had read it previously and really liked it and said, oh, you got to read this one too. So I'm glad I got to that. Then I read a book called Coleman Hill by Kim Coleman Foote. And this is a book that I originally got a copy of the audiobook through NetGalley. And this is what I would call autofiction. So this is about the Coleman family, and it is about all these different members of the Coleman family. But the thing that everybody has in common in this family is that they're very dysfunctional. And there's a lot of abuse and just negativity, hostility without the different branches of the family. And reading this book originally, I didn't know that it was autofiction. So I'm listening to the story and I'm just like, wow, this poor family, the kids in this family, it's like so rough. And then I got to the very end of the book and there was an author's note from Kim Coleman Foote. And she was talking about this is like basically essentially autofiction, that she started looking into her family's history and genealogy and stuff like that, because she kind of wondered why so many of the people in her family were the way that they were. And she took what she found, all this research and everything, and then created a book about it. And she used, artistic liberties to kind of fill in some of the gaps, but she tried to stay as true as possible to the people that she was writing about. After that, so that was the end of my reading for Black History Month. Those were like the last 3 books that I read in February. And then starting in January, I have like a Women's History Month type of a TBR. There's some other stuff on there because I have reading for Mystery Mayhem Madness, March Mystery Madness. That's what it is. And then for Middle Grade March and Irish Readathon. So I have a couple books that are not from women on my TBR for those reasons, but otherwise pretty much everything on my TBR is women and strong female characters all month long. So I started March with Regrets by Lee Kelly. This is a thriller. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic thriller. There is a bunch of people in this community. They go over to a house. The person that's like hosting this party is a social media influencer, and she's celebrating like a big accomplishment and some sort of big contract. And there's a lot of like fighting between the different people and like snobbery and just, people are kind of two-faced. And then there's this noxious cloud of gas that kind of settles over the town. The airport gets shut down, communications shut down. People are freaking out because their kids and their spouses and stuff are like in different locations. They have no way to get home to them. And so you're like trapped inside this house with these people that don't really get along super well. And all of them are kind of like fake. They're, hiding behind a mask. And so we start to see the real characters come out. And then there's like a side plot of, some of them trying to get home to family. This was an okay read. It wasn't fantastic. It definitely wasn't good as the last three books that I mentioned. If you like thrillers, if you like kind of like post-apocalyptic stories that don't go too in depth into the post-apocalyptic part, like it has a post-apocalyptic setting, but it doesn't really dive into the apocalypse or what's happening. It's mostly just, machinery to move the story forward. You might enjoy this one. It was an okay read. It wasn't terrible. And then I started two more books before the end of the week, but I have not finished them yet. So they will roll into the next week's reading. The first one is Fierce Ambition by Jeanette Conant. And this is about a woman named Maggie Higgins. She was the first really well-known female war correspondent. And this book is really a very interesting read. I'm only about maybe 10 to 15% into the book. And I'm getting the backstory of who Maggie Higgins was as a young person and how she got interested in journalism, and how like initially as she got interested in journalism, she was getting all these fluff pieces and, stuff that's like women's interests, like knitting and cooking, at least women's interests back then, women's interests. And she was just really frustrated with that. She wanted to do really serious journalism. She wanted to be out like in war zones reporting on that. And she eventually became famous because she was like one of the only female reporters to report on the release of the Jewish prisoners from some of the concentration camps in Germany. And she was really well respected. And like I said, it was pretty remarkable because she was one of the only female correspondents that was able to do that. Really enjoying this book so far. I find it very, very fascinating. And I think it's like the perfect book to start Women's History Month with, because this is like a woman that just refused to be told no. She's very opinionated and strong. She knows what she wants and she's like going after it no matter how many times she gets knocked down. So I'm finding that part really fantastic and interesting. And honestly, I, in a lot of ways, really relate to this particular character. There are a lot of times as a younger person where she like rubs people the wrong way because she's so intense and passionate about her career and about her beliefs and things. And so I definitely related to parts of that. After that, I also started My Side of the River by Elizabeth Camarillo Gutierrez. This is a memoir of Elizabeth's childhood. She lived here in the United States. She was born here in the United States. She's a citizen, but her parents were immigrants. And she remembers like growing up and everything, and then remembers her parents' deportation. And she's essentially like stuck in the United States without her parents. And, it causes a lot of obviously strife and family issues. And I grew up really close to the border. So I know a lot of families that have been affected by this specific issue. My ex-husband, actually, his mother was deported when he was like 15. And so I know the deportation process very intimately. And I know what happens to kids that are left behind, when their parents are deported and sent to other countries. So this is a specific topic that I feel very passionately about and have, experienced pretty up close. And this is, I think, going to be a very emotional read for me. But I also think with like the wave of immigration that we're having in the United States and how, this has turned into a super political issue and people are trying to, push one way or another, and they're demonizing people that are suffering. I think this is the most important time to be reading immigrant stories and looking at the reality of what happens when, we don't care for immigrants the way that they should be cared for. So I'm enjoying the writing style in this one so far. I have only gotten maybe 5% into the book. I literally just started it this morning. But I think that Elizabeth writes in a very clear, concise way. I think her writing is really understandable, and I'm really curious about her personal experience with this situation. So that was everything from that I either finished last month or I started last month. And now what I'm hoping to also read next week. And I'm pretty ambitious this month. I think I'm going to read quite a bit more than I have in past months. As I mentioned, March, there's some stuff going on that's allowed me a lot more reading time than usual. So if this list seems a little bit overambitious, that's possibly why. So on top of finishing those two books, I am hoping to get to Kindred by Octavia Butler. This is a book that I have heard nothing but rave reviews about. I don't think I've heard anyone ever say anything bad about Kindred, but in particular, the reason that I bumped it up on my list is I saw a video by a relatively new channel called Kindles and Kicks. And his channel is so fantastic. If you're into fantasy and sci-fi, he is a channel you should absolutely be following. And he did a review on Kindred by Octavia Butler, and it was just such an impassioned review. And the things that he had to say about it specifically and why it resonated with him and why he couldn't even like give it a star rating because it was such a moving book for him. It just made me really want to dive into it. It's been a book that's been on my TBR for a while, but I haven't like been like, oh, I need to go get to that book right now. And after seeing Kindles and Kicks's review of it, I was like, you know what? Let me just make that my next book. This really, I feel like I want to read this while I have his words in my head. After that, I have The Jinn Waits 100 Years by Shubnam Khan. This is a book that I had an e-audio copy from NetGalley, and it is fantasy. It's set in South Africa, I believe. We have a character, young girl, who like her and her father are struggling with the loss of their mother, and out of grief, they move to this like decrepit mansion on the coast of South Africa. And I think they're like imagining, rehabbing this decrepit building. But as they're exploring it, the young girl finds a jinn trapped in a room, and the room is like trapped in grief. This jinn is mourning the loss of a previous resident of the house. And so this sounds really good. I know that there's some romance elements to it, and that's not typically my jam, but I think because there's like a lot of fantasy elements and I love Middle Eastern folklore, jinns and things like that, I think this will be a good read for me. I'm also hoping to get to Piglet by Lottie Hazel. This is a brand new release. It just came out, and it is about a woman who wants to have it all. She's like a cookbook editor. She's newly engaged. Life is going really well. And then just as she's about to get married, her husband has an affair. He betrays her. And she finds herself like responding to that betrayal with ravenous hunger for life, hunger for food, hunger for experiences, everything. And it just sounds like it's going to be an exploration of, not forgetting yourself for relationships and learning how to deal with that grief when a relationship ends. I'm looking forward to getting into that. And then if I have time, I have a couple more books. Those are probably my priorities. My next, like on the list, if I get through those, would be The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. This is a book I have on audio. It's a super long audiobook. I think it's like 25 hours long, but this is a book that sounds fantastic. We have a young boy who is falsely accused of a crime when he's protecting his sister from like some racist white men, I think. And he gets sent to a reformatory school. And it turns out, obviously that the school is like horrific. And there's some elements of like, I want to say like some haunting elements involved in it. I haven't read Tananarive Due before, but this book is getting rave reviews everywhere. It's been featured by Aardvark Book Club, and I find that typically I really enjoy Aardvark's selections. So I am thinking that I'm going to really like that book. And so I'm pretty anxious to get into it. I have it for 20 days. So, I mean, I don't have to get to it this week, but definitely if I have the time, I will. Some other options I have are Death Valley by Melissa Broder. I've been meaning to read this one for a while. It's a pretty short read. I think it's like 200 pages, like 220. So if I have, maybe 4 or 5 hours available at some point this week, I might pop into this one. This is about a woman who is grieving, and she goes out to, I want to say like Joshua Tree area, and she goes off on a hike and finds like this big cactus and wanders into the cactus and has this like trippy experience. I'm not clear if she's like hallucinating or if it's like a magical realism thing. I know that this is kind of a hit and miss book. Some people seem to love it. Some people seem to hate it. I've never read Melissa Broder before, but I do really like kind of that acid trip sort of experience in reading. So I'm thinking that I'll probably enjoy this one, but if not, it's a very short read. So. And then I want to also start my book in Spanish for the month. So I am thinking this month that I will be reading Lo que yo vi by Laura Esquivel. This is an author that I have read before. She wrote like Water for Chocolate, and I really enjoyed that book. I enjoy her writing. This was a book that a friend of mine donated to my mom, to her little free library. And so she actually donated like 300 books or so to my mom's little free library. And so when I was there, I took a look, and there was a bunch of books in Spanish. So I took a couple of the books in Spanish that I was interested in reading, this being one of them. And then when I finish them, I will pass them back to a little free library that specifically stocks Spanish books. There's a couple in San Diego County that I know of. So I'm really looking forward to getting in this one. And I really like that the pages in this are, first of all, it looks like, like writing, like old fashioned writing paper, but there's also lots of pictures in here. I think this should be a really interesting read. See pictures of family and things. So I'm really looking forward to getting into this and learning more about Laura Esquivel. So those are the books that I am hoping to read within like the next week or so. Other than that, in terms of personal updates, there's not too much going on. We're trapped in the house right now here in Vegas. We have really bad windstorms this weekend. We've been getting gusts up to 70 miles an hour. In our little apartment complex here, we've had like 4 trees ripped down, and tiles are falling off the roofs and stuff like that. So it's a little precarious going outside at the moment. So I will be kind of staying in for the rest of the weekend. And then this week is just like a normal work week. Other than that, I had some health issues that cropped up. I've been waiting to see a specialist for a bit. And so I was finally able to see the specialist for my first appointment like a week and a half ago. So I have a follow-up appointment in 2 weeks, and hopefully I will get some resolution with some of the health issues that I've been having, which would be really nice. Oh, hey, Kristen, I see you just popped in. Hope your evening is good. Yeah, it's good so far. We went out for brunch this morning with my best friend and his wife are in town, and it's his birthday. So we met them out on the Strip, which is like the first time I've been to the Strip in, I don't know, 6 or 8 months. But we met them at the Venetian and had a nice brunch for his birthday. So that was really enjoyable. And we walked around in the Venetian a little bit and looked at some of the shops and checked things out. And then now we're home. We're just having a relaxing evening. Both Oz and I are really exhausted. February was just a crazy, exhausting month for us. What age did you start reading in Spanish? I started reading in Spanish around 16. So I learned Spanish when I was 15, or I started learning Spanish when I was 15. And I would say that around the age of 16, I was conversational enough to read like middle grade books. And so I started reading at that age in Spanish, and I would read like middle grade books. And then probably around 18 or 19, I started to read books that were like more kind of close to my age level. But then I would have to go through and like mark up the books and annotate them very significantly. I have books from that age still that I've kept because like when I scribble in books like that, I always keep them. And you can see just like I've basically the whole page is just full of lines, and then like basically on the side I created like little dictionaries where any word that I highlighted, I would write the word in English on the side so I could quick translate. Now I don't have to do that anymore. I usually can either figure out like words I don't understand by contextual clues, or luckily Oz is fluent in Spanish, so I can usually, if I really can't figure something out, I can ask him. But for the most part, like something like this should be no problem at all. It also really depends too with most languages. You have variations depending on the region. So Laura Esquivel is Mexican, I believe. And that's the dialect of Spanish that I'm the most familiar with. And so that's usually the easiest for me to understand. I get like all of the colloquialisms and like the words that are being used because those are mostly the words that I grew up with. Whereas like if I read a book from Spain, for example, when I've read like Carlos Ruiz Zafón, who's one of my favorite authors in Spanish, but there's definitely a lot more work for me in reading and translating his books because he uses like colloquialisms and sayings and phrases and things that are unfamiliar to me. And then just like words for things change very significantly from one country to the next. I can think of like a handful of words just off the top of my head, like the word for straw. It's different in almost every single country. So, like what Mexican would say for straw is papote, but then like other places say completely different things. And so it gets fun when you read in Spanish, depending on the region and how familiar. So yeah, I would say like Spanish from Spain, and then maybe like Dominican and Cuban Spanish are the 3 that are still the hardest for me, which is funny because, my partner is Cuban, but I'm still very much learning Cuban Spanish because I didn't grow up with Cubans around me very much. So yeah, sorry, that was way more than you asked. Yes, the winds have been crazy in Vegas. Stay safe. Yes, they have been really crazy. They're dying down a little bit this afternoon. Like I said, last night we were having gusts up to 70 miles an hour. It was pretty wild. I came out last night from work, me and my coworker, and there was a tree on top of her car, which, was not the funnest way to finish a 12-hour shift. So she and I luckily were able to get the tree off of her car. It was just a relatively small tree. So between the two of us, we could lift it off. But I felt bad because it just like scratched all her paint, and the back of her car was just, I mean, luckily it wasn't like crushed or anything, but it was really scraped up. So yeah, that's been not the funnest. I've been like really paranoid about where to park because we just bought a new car like a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, the last thing I want is to have a tree fall on my new car. But it is supposed to end tonight, and I know my parents are getting it probably worse in San Diego. I know just California is getting crushed with storms right now, and we're mostly just getting the wind and the dust. So, it could be worse. Yeah, so that's about it. We're gonna go out here in a minute if the wind settles down enough and try to get Luna some exercise. She's really stir crazy at the moment because we haven't been able to really walk her the way that she needs. So yeah. All right. Well, we've talked about, personal updates, channel updates, reading updates from last week, what I'm reading going forward this week. So I think that's about all I have. Like I mentioned, I am going to be scheduling a live stream to celebrate reaching 1,500 subscribers. And I'm going to do like a Q&A. So please look out for that. If you want to send me questions for that, feel free to like type them into the comment box, or you can leave them on any video. Like if you think of something that you want to ask, just pop it on a video. I always check my comments like on a daily basis. And yeah, look for content all week. I'm going to be updating regularly and a lot more engaged in March. So I'm looking forward to talking with all of you, connecting again, catching up. If I follow your channel as well, expect over this month that I'm going to be catching up. I've already started. How I usually tend to comment on people's videos is like, I will go once every other week or so and like just hit a bunch of videos all at once. That's a little easier for me to do than like trying to check all the different channels every single day. So if you suddenly get a huge like jolt of comments from me, that's what's going on. Yes, lots of wind here. Oh, that's my mom. She's in San Diego. So yeah, lots of wind there. And Kristen, have a great walk. Thank you so much, guys. I hope everybody has a safe evening or morning, depending on your time zone. I hope the week ahead is a restful one for you. I know it's going to be a restful one for me. So I hope it's productive, restful. I hope everybody reads some good books, and I will see you all very, very soon. Thanks again. Bye.